There we go. Everybody can hear me now? Good deal. Okay. Good evening. Welcome. My name is Sal Cumella. I'm the Executive Director here at the Matheson Museum. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the sponsors of the Matheson, whose support makes our programming possible. Our sponsors are Visit Gainesville, Alachua County, the City of Gainesville, and Alachua County. Just as a reminder, the Matheson Museum is a nonprofit institution, and we rely on the support of our members, donations, and volunteers. If you're not already a member, we would love to have you as a member or a member of our museum family. If you'd like more information on how to donate or become a volunteer, you can go to our website, www.mathesonmuseum.org, or talk to any of our staff. We'd be happy to help. I also want to take the opportunity to remind everybody that this Saturday, February 22nd, is the last day to view our Voices and Votes exhibit. If you know anybody who hasn't come and seen it, please spread the word that Saturday is the last day to come and see this great exhibit. As much as we are sad to see this exhibit go, we are very excited about the new exhibit, which is our bicentennial exhibit celebrating the 200th anniversary of Alachua County. That exhibit is titled The Alachua Phenomenon, 2 Centuries in Florida's Eden, and we hope you will come out and join us March 12th at 7 p.m. We'll be having opening ceremonies for that exhibit, and it'll be open throughout the year. Now I'm delighted to welcome tonight's program, a conversation with the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project on the Digital Black Heritage Trail in partnership with UF Libraries and UF Museum Studies. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for a conversation with the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project on the Digital Black Heritage Trail. I'm Jennifer Hofer. I am a librarian at the George A. Smathers Libraries at the University of Florida, celebrating 100 years this year. Tonight's event is a continuation of our ongoing celebration of Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God as part of the Alachua County Big Read. And if you haven't gotten your free copy, we do have copies of the novel back there along with the copies of the map. The Alachua County Big Read is presented through a partnership between the Smathers Libraries, the Alachua County Library District, and the UF College of the Arts. Tonight's event would not be possible without additional collaboration and support from our host, the Matheson History Museum, and the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project. All of our events are made possible by funding from the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the NEA Big Read program, it's intended to broaden our understanding of ourselves and our neighbors through the power of a shared reading experience. The goals of the NEA Big Read are to inspire meaningful conversations, celebrate local creativity, elevate a wide variety of voices and perspectives, and build stronger connections in each community. The theme of this year's NEA Big Read is Where We Live, and our selection of Their Eyes Were Watching God is for the way that it can serve as a lens through which we explore the intersections of environment, people, and history in North America. And those intersections made it natural that we should have an event like tonight featuring the work of the ACCRP and the creation of the Digital Black Heritage Trail Map. So tonight you'll hear from this wonderful panel of community leaders who will discuss their involvement with the ACCRP and the co-creation of the map and the website. And now I would like to introduce the person who has served as our bridge to the ACCRP, Dr. Jacque Micieli-Voutsinas. Jacque is an international leader on the curation of feelings and emotion in places of difficult heritage. As a critical museum and heritage studies scholar, Jacque's research program explores the evocative power of places of difficult heritage to cultivate public emotion, such as fear, anger, empathy, and hope, and generate a collective sense of community in the wake of traumatizing events. With expertise on landscapes of terrorism broadly defined, Jacque's work critically interrogates dominant narratives of cultural memory and questions of historical justice. She's a national expert on the memorialization of September 11, 2001, and the reemergence of terrorism in American memory throughout the post-9/11 decades. In 2022, Jacque served as a PI on a racial justice seed grant with the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project. The grant collaboration enabled the co-creation of the Alachua County Digital Black Heritage Trail Map and website and a permanent exhibit honoring local victims of racial terror lynching. Jacque has served as a research and exhibition consultant with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, and the Holocaust Museum for Hope and Humanity. She has also held long-term partnerships with the National September 11th Memorial Museum and Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum, with additional partnerships underway at other important sites of consciousness. Jacque is currently an assistant professor and rotating program head of the Museum Studies graduate program at the University of Florida, and an affiliated faculty member in the Department of Geography, Center for the Arts in Medicine, and the Florida Museum of Natural History.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let's see if that worked. There we go. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to the Big Reads Grant for facilitating our gathering this evening, and to the Matheson Museum for hosting us. It is an honor to be here with you this evening, and my privilege to introduce to you tonight's distinguished speakers. Over the last 3 years, I have had the great privilege of getting to know each of this evening's speakers individually, and it has been an honor to witness their deep, deep wisdom of this area and its history. They are the true keepers of this history, and it has been a true honor to labor alongside of them and to learn from each of them. So I'm going to read now a bio for every single person up here. It will appear at the end of the PowerPoint, which I will manually loop at some point this evening, but bear with me. Reading out loud is not my strong suit. So we have, beginning in alphabetical order, Shirley Green Brown. The Honorable, and if you'd like to nod, Shirley Green Brown is a retired educator after 38 years of service in Alachua County Public Schools. She is a board member of the Children's Advocacy Center, the 20 Pearls Foundation, and has served as president of the Alachua Women's Club and the Friends of the Library Alachua branch. She is actively involved in the St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal AME Church and has served as a former president of the Mu Epsilon Omega chapter of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Society. The Honorable Shirley Green Brown has also served as city commissioner in Alachua County since 2012, where she also served as vice mayor for 3 terms. She is married with children and has 2 grandchildren. Commissioner Brown is the chair of the ACCRP's Alachua-Newnansville Sub-Committee. And next up, we have Ms. Gerie Crawford. Ms. Crawford has served as a grassroots activist throughout her life and career. In 2016, she retired after 35+ years of public service and has since spearheaded local efforts to organize her community. As chair of the St. Peter St. Paul Community Council, she has worked with her community to impact policy change. Specifically, she has worked statewide to protect African American property rights in order to sustain the generational wealth her ancestors were determined to own. In 2012, she collaborated and published an article in Environmental Justice magazine entitled Best Practices in Rural Neighborhood-Based Activism for Environmental Justice. Gerie is a member of several local and national boards and organizations. She also holds degrees from Bethune-Cookman University and Florida International University. Gerie is the chair of the ACCRP's Archer Subcommittee. Hopping 2 over, Dr. Sherrod DuPree is a librarian and historian whose research focuses on African American gospel music and African American Pentecostal churches. She was a professor at Santa Fe College and an archivist at the University of Florida's Institute of Black Culture and the University of Florida Libraries here in Gainesville. She is the author of several books and papers on African American history. Her research has been included in several major museum exhibits, including the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. Go to DC and see it. It's amazing. Her papers, books, and research collections are available for view at the P.K. Young Library of Florida History. Dr. DuPree is a member of the ACCRP's Newberry Jonesville Subcommittee. Coming back over one this way, Miss Veloria Kelly is a lifelong, my Long Island came out there, a lifelong Florida resident with a long history of volunteering. As a concerned citizen, she has volunteered with her church and with the Alachua County Public School Systems, the United Way of North Central Florida, and Blossoming Butterfly. Veloria retired in June of 2019 after 35 years of service to the state of Florida, spending the last 12 years as the director of the Division of Certified Public Accounting and executive director to the Florida Board of Accounting. Veloria Kelly is the chair of the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project's High Spring Subcommittee, as well as Education Subcommittee. Going all the way down one end from the end here, we have Reverend Mary Jackson. Miss Jackson is a long-term resident of Waldo, Florida. A graduate of Eastside High School, Mary holds a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry from Bethune-Cookman University and a Master's of Divinity from Osbury Theological Seminary. She is currently serving as senior pastor at Ebenezer Methodist Church of Jacksonville, Florida. She is married to Irving Jackson and has 2 children and a granddaughter. Reverend Mary Jackson is the chair of the Alachua Community Remembrance Project's Waldo, of the ACCRP's Waldo, Hawthorne, and Rochelle subcommittees. And on the end here, we have Mayor Jacque Randall. Mayor Randall is a registered respiratory therapist, with 14 years of experience. She is currently a clinical instructor with Santa Fe College in Gainesville. Helping students become passionate about helping others is a complete joy for Jacque. She is a 3rd-generation commissioner in the city of Hawthorne, where both her maternal grandfather and mother both served on city council. She began her service as commissioner in June of 2019, with the last 2 years as mayor. She is a part of various groups, including the Florida Black Caucus, or LEO, Alachua County League of Cities, and Young Elected Municipal Officials, or YEMO, of which she is also a founding member. Her political priorities are centered around education and healthcare. She believes that these 2 values are cornerstones for any healthy and thriving community. Mayor Randall is a member of the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project's Waldo, Hawthorne, and Rochelle subcommittee. 3 in from the end, we have Ayoka Sowa, or Sister Ayoka as she goes by. She is a native of the Monteocha community, where she resides with her husband, Nisowa. She is the granddaughter of Abraham Irving Roselia, co-founder of the Monteocha community, originally called the Jerusalem community, along with co-founder David Singleton. She is the co-founder of Ayoka Gifts and holds affiliations with NCF Black Farmers, Atlas AMEC, and is an alumna of VUL and PAFM. Ayoka is the chair of the ACCRP's Monteocha, Gordon, LaCrosse subcommittees. Almost there. Mayor Jiana Williams is a lifelong resident of Micanopy, Florida, and has led the ACCRP's Micanopy Subcommittee since 2021. She attributes her current leadership role as the mayor of Micanopy as a direct reflection of the ACCRP's impactful efforts. Mayor Williams is the chair of the ACCRP's Micanopy Subcommittee. And I see I have a printing error here, and I can't do this for our final speaker, so. And finally, it is my privilege to introduce our first speaker and moderator for this evening's conversation, Reverend Carl Smart. Carl Smart is an accomplished professional with more than 40 years of experience in public administration. He recently retired from his position as Deputy County Manager for Alachua County. In this capacity, he was responsible for providing leadership and oversight to community support services, including court services, animal resources, sustainability, equity, economic development, and food systems departments. Now I think I can go back over here. Yes. Mr. Smart holds a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies from the University of Texas at Arlington and a bachelor's degree in management from Nova Southeastern University. He also served as an adjunct instructor at the University of Georgia. Carl is a founding member of the ACCRP and still serves on its executive leadership committee. Please join me in welcoming your speaker and moderator for this evening, Mr. Carl Smart.
Thank you, Dr. Jacque, and just want to thank the Matheson Museum for inviting us here and allowing us to be here this evening, and for the University of Florida Museum Studies, and for all of those who are responsible for making this tonight events happen. I'm here with a powerful group tonight on this panel, and so we want to share with you the work that we've been doing, a kind of a reflection of the work that we've been doing with the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project. I'll try not to say that too many times. That we like to just break it into an acronym and say ACCRP. And so I'll be using that instead of saying the whole thing tonight. ACCRP started out of a couple of conversations, one by the Board of County Commissioners. There was a really healthy and tense debate over whether Old Joe, the Confederate statue that stood on the west lawn of the Alachua County Administration property for over 100 years, I think about 104 years it stood there. And so there was a healthy discussion on whether it should stay or Old Joe should go. And there was a lot of citizens who showed up to the board to voice their opinions. As it turned out, there was probably more people supporting Old Joe staying than Old Joe going. But at the end of the debate, the commissioners decided that Old Joe did not reflect the current values of the community. And it had served as a symbol of intimidation, if you will, on the community, particularly the people of color in this community for over 100 years. Old Joe needed to go. So it was returned to the organization that donated it. That was the Daughters of the Confederacy. So Old Joe was carefully removed. We didn't want to harm Old Joe, and so it was carefully removed and returned to the Daughters of the Confederacy. And so it's still here in the county, but it's out in the rural area where it has plenty of space to to enjoy the sights out there in the rural area. Another thing that happened is a group of citizens did go to Montgomery to the Equal Justice Initiative, and they saw there the Legacy Museum and a collection, if you will, of soil from sites of lynching, lynching of black people, and they were touched by that. I don't know anyone who wouldn't be touched by that kind of an exhibit. And so they decided to come back to Alachua County and talk about forming a group to follow that model from the Equal Justice Initiative, EJI, as we call it. Brian Stevenson, you've probably heard of Just Mercy, the movie, the book, and Brian Stevenson, the work that he has done in Montgomery. And so that model was adopted, and the ACCRP was formed with a group of citizens like the ones you see here on this panel that were concerned and willing to get in and do some work to research one and then find out what happened in Alachua County. As it turned out, through the work of folks like Dr. Patricia Hilliard-Nunn, professor at the University of Florida, who did so much research, and you've already heard about Dr. Sherry DuPree and Karen Kirkman and other historians locally. Also worked along with the historians at Equal Justice Initiative at EJI, found that there were a lot of lynchings that occurred right here in Alachua County. You wouldn't think that that would be the case, but it was. Looking at that period of time, the post-Reconstruction period, 1877, 1926, and in some cases up to 1950. So we found about 50 lynchings that occurred, lynchings of black people that occurred. Back then, as a not just intimidation, but punishment, and also to frighten and to keep people of color in line, if you will, during that time. So we decided, in pulling together ACCRP, we pulled together subcommittees throughout the county. Most of the community remembrance projects around the South and around the country have one committee that actually does the work. You can see we've got a number of committees here. There's 9 cities in Alachua County. And so all 9 have a subcommittee, and all 9 have been working. All 9 have been doing soil collections, all 9 historical markers, as well as essay contests with high school students, and quilts. There's one example of the quilt over here. So all have been working, and so what we have is a number of questions we want to ask them. You see the timeline, 2017, Old Joe removal. Actually, the county approved the Truth and Reconciliation Resolution. That resolution committed the Alachua County staff to working along with the citizens to get this work done. 2019, establishing ACCRP, and expanded on the list that EJI had. They were amazed that we were able to find others. This is a listing of those victims. And if you haven't seen the exhibit in the lobby of the Alachua County Administration Building, there is an exhibit now that has been put together with soil, with the jars of soil from those lynching sites, working with the university's museum studies. I think you'll be touched by that exhibit. This is an example of the historical markers. And they've done some amazing, beautiful work with the quilts. We started out, we weren't thinking quilts at all, and someone came up with the idea, and here we are, beautiful quilts. And we've worked really closely with Dr. Jacque and her volunteers and students at University of Florida, and it's made for a great partnership. And so we continue to do the work. There's some of the students there that have been involved in the program. They're doing an excellent job. And then we come up with the idea of doing a heritage trail. And normally, when you think of a Black Heritage Trail, you might think of a tour around the community. And this is a tour, but it's a digital tour. And so you can go on the website and take that tour and learn about a lot of very interesting, important sites, designated sites of interest with Black history. And now is a great time to do that, and very easily done. The Sankofa bird there, you see the memorial. Alachua County replaced Old Joe with the memorial there with the Sankofa bird, which is the bird that symbolizes looking back into our history, learning from our history, but still moving forward. And also is the memorial to Dr. Patricia Hilliard Nunn. And so if you haven't seen that on the west lawn of the County Administration Building, please check that out. That's an image of the soil exhibit that's in the lobby of the County Administration Building now. And with that, I think we can start the Q&A of our panel and let them kind of respond to some of the questions and tell you about some of the experiences they've had in working with this project. Let me just say one thing as we get started. One of the things we found out early on is that we needed to be sensitive, to the emotional impact of doing this kind of research and doing this kind of study and having these discussions, sensitive to that, both sides. When we have, in having discussions with people, there are some families now, families of people of color who were lynched, people who were impacted by the lynchings back during that time. And there's also people and families of those who were involved in doing the lynching. So you had to be sensitive to both sides, to all folk. And so we put together a trauma-informed committee, and they helped to remind us of that. And most of the time, when we start our meetings now, we always start with a moment of silence and just kind of, reflect and get settled, get stable, because the conversations are sometimes very, very difficult. But let me start with some questions. I'm just going to ask a question, and then we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes.
That is a boom mic too, so go underneath it if you can. Yep.
Okay. I'll ask the question, but I will allow, anyone who wants to respond to the question, you can respond. Everybody doesn't have to respond to every question. But if you feel compelled, please speak up. We have one mic. It's over there in front of Dr. DuPree and Mayor Williams there, and we'll pass that mic down to whoever wants to speak in response to the question. The very first question is, generally, what has the work of the ACCRP meant to your respective committees? What has the work meant to your committees? Just kind of reflecting on that. Who wants to start that off?
I'll start.
You'll start. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The work has been informative. The work has been rewarding. The work has touched my heart. It's been a very, very emotional process, but it's taught me so much. It has helped our committee develop so much history about the Alachua-Newnansville area. And I think we all could feel somewhat of how the families felt. If you were to put yourselves in their positions of having a loved one lynched, it speaks volumes. It hurts. And I think when I attended the memorial service at Mount Pleasant in 2020, I just felt I need to do something more. I need to find out more. I need to put my hands to work. And I have such a super, super committee that has embraced it, and all hands are on deck. We love what we do, and we're going to continue this effort. And I'll let somebody else talk.
All right. Who's next? That won't go far.
Oh, okay. Well, then,
But there's another mic over there.
okay. Hi. Good evening. I would say for me and our committee, it actually brought our community together because our subcommittee is cross-generational, and we have members on our committee that, as you eloquently put it, remember or have descendants that were part of this horrific history. It offered me an opportunity to learn about all the other communities and what has happened in their communities, but things that I didn't even know that had happened in my own community. And I think what stands out is the soil collection ceremony that was done. I think that's in, was it Half Moon? Mm-hmm. Okay. And these two young kids were lynched. I think they were like 10 and 12 or 8 and 10. Mm-hmm. And they were accused of killing a cow or stealing a pig. Mm-hmm. You just keep in mind, these kids were 10 and 12. and they were lynched. And I think that just sat with me because a mother stood there and witnessed that. A cousin, a father, church members, the community, they witnessed that. And then they had to remember that. Oh, that happened to Cousin Bob's daughter 20 years ago, 40 years ago. That's trauma. That is just trauma it's passed down generationally. So I think for me, just to kind of get to the meat of it, it just really opened up my world to things and I thought I knew a lot about history in Alachua County and lynchings, but I quickly came to realize that I did not know what I thought I knew. So that was important.
All right. Next.
Good evening. I will just echo Gerie and Commissioner Brown's sentiments. Like Gerie, I thought I knew because I'm well-read, I like to read, I study history, but it was all of these things that happened in my community as a lifelong resident of Alachua County, and I did not know. And the amount that I didn't know, there were certain things I knew, about the Newberry 6, but just what happened in Little Old High Springs or what happened over in Archer or, and then learning there's history outside of what happens in Gainesville, all of the rural communities, and just to sit with it. And then the soil collections, they're all just so meaningful. And I attend one and then I'd go to another one, but it was just like not having been to one because they were similar, but they're all so different. And I think the last one that was over in Archer, I sat there and I just cried, and I had gone to the one in Alachua, and it wasn't like this was the first one I'd gone to, but it just, I think maybe Mr. Williams, I think, was the victim because he had been an elected official, and then, okay, this is a political lynching, political terror to instill more fear, and so it was just, but it was the realization that the work is important and there's so much that we don't know, and maybe we know this, but there's somebody else out there that don't know it, and we have an obligation to share. So, thank you.
Greetings to everyone this evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I do want to go back to the situation at Half Moon, which was outside about 5 or 6 miles from Newberry, and that fell into the area where we were studying. But we have to go back to oral history. There's no way we can cover these things without some of our seniors sharing their history, or sharing it in the Bible, and sharing it in other materials that we have that can tell the truth. One thing that we must mention is AP, which is Associated Press. Associated Press built these stories up for the community, and they were not built up for the Black community. They were built up for the other communities, many communities. And it was a way of sensation, it was picnicking, and it was other things to cause them to feel comfortable about what was going on in these communities. And to see and to hear and to learn that some of these things were not true, but yet we didn't know. We had to live with it and go forward. I do want to say one thing with the historic marker that went up in Newberry. It's a beautiful marker, but the marker mentions the 2 boys, which was Mandy Price and Robert Suggs, as adults, adult men, put in the AP. It went all over the country. We found it in Canada, we found it out in Ohio and other places, because once the AP picks up the article, it goes everywhere. and it's shared everywhere. But when you go back and talk to the people in the community, this was not so. I mean, and we even interviewed a few people that we can't even give their interviews out today. They said, no, because we're going to lose our land. Y'all going to come out here and kill my dogs. Can you imagine the amount of stress that these people have been under and still are under concerning these situations that have occurred in their community? And going to Montgomery, Alabama, and speaking to the situation there, Montgomery said this, I'm talking about the organization, we have to accept what AP has because we don't have any more documentation. Well, we got to get busy, people. You got to listen to your folk, you got to listen to your community and find out the truth. Now, once you find out what you think is the truth, then you got to take the time to document that. You got to go back and you encourage these seniors by saying, well, what happened during World War II? Oh, I can remember that. And then they'll start talking about situations. Or what happened when we didn't have good crops that season? Talk about things that will make them come back and talk about what was happening in their community. And they will tell it. But many times when they tell it, we have to be comfortable in sharing what they want the public to know. And we have to be careful how we share it because you got opposition on both sides. You know, one will say, yes, this happened. The others will say, no, this did not happen. We give them the facts and they still will not accept the truth. And one example I will give you, and this is from, I'm talking too much, but I'll take this few more minutes. This was with the Perkins. Becky Perkins. Aunt Becky is who they call her, Aunt Becky. Well, this is how whites referred to blacks that were very kind to them and helped them. She was a midwife. She was well respected in the community, loved by the people in the community, the white community and the black community. So we have to realize that these things happen too. But when we did the research, we were able to find out what her name was. It was Rebecca. But we found out that her name was English also, Rebecca English. Now, are we going to include that in history? I don't know, because many times when the markers go up and so forth, that history has been omitted. It was Aunt Becky, because this is the way the community remembers her, and this is what you want to be carried out. Well, some others will say, we need to include her name because we know who her parents were. We got the statistics on this situation. Where do we go? How do you handle that? These are issues that we deal with every day. And these are issues that we have to concern ourselves with if we are telling the truth. Are we telling the truth? Or are we giving history as we perceive it? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. For the town of Micanopy, I'll answer that just in two different ways. Personally, I don't think I'll ever forget that initial feeling that I felt on our first Zoom call. Of course, when I came onto the committee, this was in the height of COVID, so we weren't able to meet in person. But I'm a lifelong resident of Micanopy, born and raised, love it with all of my heart. I wear it on my chest. Never in my years of learning did I know that a lynching had occurred less than 3 minutes away from where I stay. The area in which the lynching was held is commonly used by the town. It's in the main drag, so it's typically looked upon in a loving way. And the work of this group, the things that I've learned, has helped me personally to move those feelings from a mental place to a place of action. And then as a community, I personally feel that our group has created a space for individuals on both sides of the racial divide to feel safe, to come and learn more about what has happened in the past so that we can do our best to not repeat those same steps. One of my favorite quotes is Maya Angelou, history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. In Micanopy, you have two different sides of history. Someone previously just stated how it can be personal. You have individuals who were connected to it on terms of being victimized, and then you also still have members of the community that are related to individuals who did the actual racial terrorism. At one point in our town hall, there was a picture hanging of Mr. Chitty. Now, if that was the Mr. Chitty that was involved with Mr. Henson's lynching, or if it was his brother or his uncle, I'm not sure. But in 2023, you could walk into a space and still see pictures and proof of these moments. So again, I think just for our town, it again has created an avenue for us to really navigate through a lot of the ugly things that happened in our town, but also again creating a place for positivity and growth.
Good evening, everyone. We don't consider Monteocha, Gordon, LaCrosse to be one city, but everybody in the Monteocha, Gordon, LaCrosse more than likely are related. I came into this organization. Someone invited me to come to the meeting. And as I was sitting there, folks were trying to figure out, where is Gordon? Our victim, Moses Smith, had come from Gordon. And so they were trying to figure whether it was Gordon Chapel or da-da-da. So I just put my finger up and said, I know Gordon. Gordon is near, between Monteocha and Brooker. And so I was able to come back to our community and to say, guess what? There was someone lynched in our area. Even doing the research and moving around and talking with the individuals in our community, nobody knew nor remembered Moses Smith. Now, the question is whether it was too painful or too scary or what? Because even like with other things, lynching and things that have happened in other areas, many times folks will deny having a knowledge of what has happened for safety's sake. And so I still don't know whether or not that's the reason that nobody will admit that Moses Smith was lynched in our area, although there is a large Smith family and families in that area. But the other thing that being a part of this organization that has helped us to unify everybody. When I came back, because in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is chief. Well, I was the one-eyed man, a woman, who came back to Monteocha with the message, hey, you know, we've got to organize an organization or a subcommittee to focus on our lynched victim. And so it was me who went around and pulled every preacher I could see, every preacher that I knew, and said, hey, you got to come and be a part of this. And even Pastor Jackson, I called her and got her involved because Waldo also is closely related to the Monteocha, you know. But we came together and we've accomplished a lot of things, and we've united even the more. At one time, Monteocha was called Jerusalem. Most people don't realize that. And somehow it became merged with some other areas, and now we are Monteocha. We said Monteocha. In the area, we call it Monteocha, but the word is Monteocha. And what other thing that it did was help us to realize that we don't have enough road signs letting folks to know where Gordon is, where Monteocha is. And so I've spoken to some of the commissioners and said, hey, that's something as a result of being a part of this that needs to happen. We know that it needs to happen, that you got to put these markers to let folks know where one area begins and where another area ends. But we have been grateful for the opportunity to serve.
So I did start on the committee with Ayoka, and then finally I became the chairperson of the Waldo Hawthorne committee, and which I was looking for someone to take the position, but I ended up taking it. But anyway, being a part of the ACCRP has really opened up my eyes to a lot of history that I did not know was in my city. It has brought awareness and education for the children and the people in my community that I am quite happy for, because otherwise it probably would not have been given to them through this route. When we had our soil collection, of course, it was very educational. The community came out. And then when we did our essay contest and we had the students from Hawthorne High School to participate and to write those beautiful essays, it just made my heart fill with joy just to be able to see that our history is being studied and lived on. The saddest thing for me was that one of the victims, and there were quite a few in our area, was an unknown black child. And as I look at the information now, he was born, this thing happened on my birthday. So ever since that, September the 6th, it's just really hurt me, in that area. So dealing with the pain of the past, and then realizing that even though you feel that pain, you still have to make sure that the information gets out to the community. And that's why I'm here, to make sure that I spread and share our history.
I'm not sure I really remember the question at this point.
I can repeat it. The question is, what has the work of the ACCRP meant to your respective committee? What has that work meant to you and meant to your committee?
Well, personally speaking, I can say the work definitely, I can piggyback on what Mayor Williams stated, is it moved us to action. In my regards, it makes it kind of structured the way I serve going forward. If there were voices back then and I'm in a position to be able to change that narrative, I'm gonna do it every opportunity I can. And so that's what I have done. I've also taken it upon myself to just personally, just like the other distinguished guests have said, making sure I educate every moment. Just last year, I took my daughter to Alabama on a college visit, and before we left, I had to take her to that museum. I had to let her see what I know the schools in this county do not teach. Because the way it landed on me, I still can't talk about it to this day. And I have pictures, and I just knew we love the post. I couldn't. I saw Mayor Williams' post when we came back from the trip, and I cried again. It was just like, I just didn't have the strength to post and capture what took place in that moment. And I was extremely thankful for Dr. Jacque and you for allowing us that moment in space. But for me, it's necessary to come home and have those conversations at dinner tables, have those conversations at lunch meetings and friend circles of, hey, you going on a trip, find a museum, find a piece of history there and be moved by that. I think it is necessary because at 40 years young, and went to a historically black college, I did not know a lot of things that fell on me in that museum. Just the Reconstruction period alone wrecked me, So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you all for your responses. I think that was a question everybody needed to respond to, so I'm glad you did. And it kind of reminded me how we've actually been able to get people talking more about this particular subject. As you know, this represents a very dark chapter in our history, and it's very painful to talk about it. And in some communities, there was a code. One of the things in talking with Mayor Marlowe out in Newberry early on, he said there was a kind of a code of silence. You don't talk about what happened on August 19, 1916. You just don't talk about it. You know, everybody knows about it, you know, but you don't talk about it too tough. And Dr. Patricia Hilliard-Nunn came out and started getting that oral history, and we've been keeping that going, getting people to be willing to discuss it. And I wanted to mention too, Jackie Davis and I, we were liaisons with EJI. We got an email just recently. You reminded me of this. That email asked, "Where is Gordon, Florida?" You know? Is it an incorporated city? So I responded, no, it's not incorporated, but it's a wonderful community. And so a lot of folks wanting to know, where is Gordon, Florida? And also there was a couple of references to the historical markers, and maybe even a reference to an error that might be on the marker. And so that's something we can look into, is if there is an error. I tell you, the markers go through a very closely scrutinized process before it's fabricated. But if there is an error, you know, how do we get that corrected? And that's something that we'll check on that and see what we can do about that. Okay. All right. And changing the subject just a little bit, and also in the interest of time, let me ask this question. How did you approach gathering the research and place-based stories for the digital Black Heritage Trail map? How do you get that information? I mean, the digital trail just has a wealth of information, just a lot of different sites of interest here in Alachua County and in your communities. How did you do that? How did you approach it, and how did you pull that information together?
In my situation for the Monteocha Gordon, because I am a lifelong resident of the area, and my grandfather, along with a couple of other folks, were the ones that settled the Monteocha area. It was Jerusalem. So with that in my memory, you know, that provoked me to do a lot of remembering things and places. The Church of God by Faith had to start in my front yard. My grandfather had a Masonic hall and a mom and pop shop. So a lot of people came and went, you know, to my area. And plus I was nosy. I was the child who went with my grandmother everywhere. And I would pretend like I wasn't paying any attention, but I was listening to everything that the older folks said. And that's why it's so important for parents to bring your children, let your children hear. Sometimes they are pretending like they are not paying any attention, but they are. And so I was able to touch bases. I had a 97-year-old auntie who knew all the stories. May she rest in peace, and I'm so sorry I didn't record a lot of it, but she knew everybody. She knew all the stories, who was related to whom and who slept with whom, and she knew everything. And so she helped me a lot and plus just being in the area, growing up in the area, between Duval Heights and Monteocha, I knew the places.
Wonderful. Thank you. Being nosy helps, right?
So for the town of Micanopy, I don't want to make it sound super simple, but it really was just a brainstorming session. It gave our subcommittee an opportunity to sit down and discuss from memory, as you just stated, places that we already knew of historically. Our subcommittee is fortunate to have a historian and a preservationist, so they added an element, an educational element to the emotional remembrance of places, but we wanted to highlight not just places of racial terrorism, but of resiliency as well. In doing so, one of the things that you learn, especially in a small town such as Micanopy, is a lot of those places were somebody's home. And as the landscape changes, so does the population, and that piece of history fades out. But there are still areas that are in good standing and of great importance. Our charter school houses the last portion of the African American school in Micanopy. Our town hall served as the white-only school. We had a town issue a few months back that made that a very tangible moment to be able to connect the dots. There was a gentleman in the room that stated, I haven't been in here since I was in 3rd grade. And when he said that, my initial thought was, you haven't been in here since this was a segregated school. And the conversation that we were having was very much so along those lines of why we needed to make a particular change or why the ask was made for a street change. But to go back to the question again, just sitting down, having those discussions, really pinpointing what was important, what was Mr. Eddie's barbershop, where was the first press business held, and being able to celebrate those individuals.
Wonderful, thank you.
I'll say that I'm not familiar with the community. I'm from North Carolina. and I had it was hard. And the same thing with Patricia. We had to build confidence in the community because they're not going to trust you when you first come out there. They got to know who you are, who your people are, and why you're out here and what you're going to do with the information. I mean, all those things got to be covered first, and then they may share some things with you. And then if you know them for a length of time for several years, they'll start calling you and telling you, hey, did you know this? Or can we talk with you? But what I did, and I think Patricia did it also, sometimes on Saturday morning, we would have the men to come over from the community. And I did that several times. They'd come over and have breakfast at my house. And those men they were just in awe that somebody thought enough of them to have them come in for breakfast and they could talk about their community. And they really would open up that way, not the women, but the men. And of course, and we did that 3 or 4 times, and we got information that we would not have gotten because the men felt comfortable in sharing some of their thoughts. And the women too later. But the women were a little more hesitant. But once those men felt that they could trust you and you weren't going to go back and, as they call it, rat on them, and I mean, the father would come, the brother would come, the uncle, we just have a whole bunch of them. And it was just like a chance for them to feel comfortable. And we would have it at my house or we'd have it someplace else, not on the grounds where they were. And they felt comfortable. And then once we had it at the Ross's place out there on the highway, and many of them came that day. Some of them who had played baseball out there came. So you have to get the people to want to work with you before you can move forward. So I really agree with what you all have said.
Thank you, Dr. DuPree. Next.
Okay. Well,
Ms. Kelly, go ahead.
yes. Over in High Springs, we started as a subcommittee and we talked. And then we took it to the churches. Small community, we go to the churches. And so what I found when I reached out to the churches, and then of course talking to family, the church historians in particular over at Mount Olive, which is the oldest African American church in High Springs, had a file like this because his mom used to keep the church history and they were just so glad that somebody else was interested in it. And the same thing with the Douglas High School. There was a member of the community whose parent had kept the history and was anxious to share and just pretty much handed me their file. And I was like, okay, I'll guard it with my life. I won't let anything happen to it. So, but people were, I think as I've heard before, they were anxious to help. Just glad that somebody cared enough to want to know what happened. And then for me personally, I discovered one of my aunts was a founding member of the Church of Christ, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that. So it was interesting in that respect as well.
For Archer, how we initially got started was basically just as everyone else has indicated. You really we started with our elders, started asking questions. I have a 96-year-old aunt, and she's lucid sometimes, but when you ask her something and she remembers it, like the school that was in Pinesville, it's like, hey, honey, do you remember this school? And she remembered, oh yeah, I went to school there. Actually, your aunt taught there. And she was talking about my great aunt, which was her aunt, Mahulda, who was also a teacher in Rosewood when that incident occurred. So I knew I was a Rosewood descendant, but I didn't know about that connection. So it's like, so that gave you something else to go and either ask a question about or just ponder on to try to research, well, how did that piece fit in, and how did it fit in our family? And when you have these smaller communities, just like you've indicated, everybody's related. It could be your 33rd cousin, but it's your cousin. And you grow up knowing that. So you just go around the family members and just ask, the churches like you've indicated. But Mary, you said something that reminded me as we were going through this research, and it's on the historical map, the Archer Gymnasium. And I've known this all my life, but somehow I forgot it. The gymnasium used to be the white school, the white elementary school in Archer. The school, it was the entire school, but the gym is now what they've remodeled and made into a historical landmark. And I guess I'd never thought about it. I'm a part of history because my sister and I and 3 other Black kids integrated that school. Wow. And I knew that all my life that I went to that school, and there was 5 of us. But I never put into, this whole scheme of things, I helped integrate a school. And the only reason I got in was because my grandfather was the janitor there. So let's call a thing a thing. But just those types of things would bring up memories, so then it gives you something else to go research a little bit to get some more information. So it's really, for us, it was engaging our community members, and as everyone has indicated, and trying to pass that on to our youth. So we tried to, with our quilt, we had youth to come in, even if they just sat there and heard the elders talk about what they remembered. Just like you're indicating, something is going to be retained. Something, and that's a good thing. So we really appreciate having that opportunity.
I think very, very quickly, because I know our time is probably running, we have some individuals on the committee who were born and raised in the city of Alachua. Sister Pat's there. And we talked about what sites would be great. But as our doctor said, the real history was captured from our seasoned members of the community. The Samuel Proctor Group interviewed, videotaped Pat. Reverend Sermon served as the interviewers, and it was magnificent. You could listen to these seasoned community members all day. They had great history, great facts. We even had one to bring in artifacts where she had attended high school, pictures. It was amazing. And when you sit there and hear the challenges and the struggles that they went through, but then you heard the successes and the happiness. It just made a world of difference for me. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to share.
All right, thank you all. We are nearing the end of our discussion this evening. And I think we may have time, and I'm going off script a little bit, Dr. Jacque, maybe for one or two burning questions from the audience that you might have for the panel. And let me also mention that Commissioner Brown mentioned lifelong residents of Alachua. One of them is our poet laureate, E. Stanley Richardson. He's here. He always have a lot of great information and history about Alachua, too. I know he's back there somewhere. Stanley, are you there? Just raise your hand. He was. He eased out. Okay. In the other area, okay. But one or two burning questions for the panel? We'll try and entertain those. I see the first hand here, and then I see a hand back there. Okay. That hand was first. Look at you. All right then. Yes, in the back.
Hi. So I was just thinking, so in the cultural moment that we're in, I feel like many can agree there is so much hostility and denial towards history broadly. And then when we think about that in the context of the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project and the histories that it's looking at and that it's unpacking, I'm wondering if you could kind of, or the panel can kind of speak to the interactions that they're hoping people will have with this history. And specifically, you know, we see difficult and hard history and assume that it's something we need to turn away from. And I'm wondering if you can speak to your intention of how you want people to react to and engage with this history from all backgrounds.
Absolutely. Excellent question, and we'll let some of the panel speak to that. Maybe a couple of people will speak to that. We have faced some pushback. It appears that we're pushing to get more Black history and more of the truth out into the community, and then there is agencies and folks that are pushing against it. So I see Mayor Randall. You want to speak to that?
Yes, sir. That is an very excellent question and very relevant for this time. I think for me personally, it's great that we have these moments. They're captured. The county puts a monument of such significance on the side, but I am all about action. You know, we can do these things, we can have these moments, and then we leave and go back to what has always been. And so we do those things by making sure we put policies and procedures in place, systems. Everything that we're discussing is systematic. So the work has to be undone by the same way it was created, which was by systems. So you undo the systems that have been put in place. We can capture all the data, and we're great about doing that here in this county, but what do we do with that data? How do we unstructure this systemic system that has been perpetuating this same outcome? Because even though we're not dealing with lynching, we still got Black boys that can't read in this county. That's a lynching in itself too, because that sends them straight to incarceration. So the lynching may not be quick, but it's long-lived.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor Randall. Anyone else want to speak to that?
To piggyback off of what Mayor Randall said, again, a call to action for yourselves and as a community. I can think of one individual, 2016 to 2019, I personally felt that there was just a hit out on African Americans. It seemed like every time you turn around, there was a say her name, there was a Black Lives Matter, there was just another hashtag. And you found yourself crusading on Facebook and making posts and sharing memes and sharing stories. And it wasn't until I got involved with this group and our particular subcommittee was stonewalled by our commission. They voted 4-1 in opposition of us collecting soil and of us getting this the education in terms of what happened. And to what Mayor Randall just said, to me, that was a form of lynching in itself. That's a form of putting your hand over my mouth and not allowing me to take this information to my community, to others outside of my community. And in that moment, you find out again that it has to be more than what you're thinking inside of your head. And I say all of that to say there's an individual in the community that when you're doing that type of work, when you're crusading, you get to a point where you just feel exhausted. You feel like, I don't want to explain this to another person. I don't want to tell you why this is important, why we need to have this. But through the efforts of this group, you come in contact with people who genuinely want to be better. They just don't know how. I use the word generational ignorance a lot. People have been brought up to really see the world in a particular way. So through our group being stonewalled in the beginning and then that leading me to personally saying, okay, I have to be involved on a greater level as opposed to just being a resident. These are individuals that I elected to represent me, and they're telling me to my face that what's important to me doesn't matter. And from that moment until now, humbly speaking, I feel like there has been, again, this almost renaissance in our area of individuals getting involved and not being ashamed to be involved. So to answer your question, the biggest thing was just being willing, hearing it and not taking it personally. We always say this is not to blame you for what has happened on behalf of your ancestors, no more than to make it my story. But we do have to discuss it, and we do have to find a way to break that mold, to not go down that road again.
Absolutely. It's about healing. It's about healing. Thank you, Mayor. Yes. And last question, if you will.
Yeah, so you can hear from my accent. I'm from Germany. I have a long history, European, a lot of that history happened in Europe, especially in Germany, all of that. So I love history. And it was fantastic to hear what you all discovered in your own history. Through that map, that interactive map, I actually found a lot of interesting history in Micanopy, where I live. And I kind of wanted to see where do we go from here, because if we want to prevent generational ignorance, maybe we need to go out and do tours in the towns and include Black history that has been excluded so far, so that it's like one whole thing. I would love to have like what we have here. You know, everybody has to come to Gainesville to meet. It would be nice to, in the future, have like meetings in all the different towns and talk about the history and bring the kids and have something to eat, or just have community and learn about that on site. The interaction map is nice, but it's even better to actually be in that part of Micanopy that was a thriving Black community and hear from people that live there what it was like to be there and what they did, like how they built the Black school and things like that.
Sounds like you're suggesting that we take this show on the road. We will certainly consider your suggestion. We've been talking about that. How do we get to this information out to more people in the community, especially our young people, especially the students? How do we do that? And we've looked at a mobile touring unit that has a soil collection on it and other the quilts and those kinds of things, and somebody to go out and speak. So we're working on that. Feel free, let me for her, but for everybody, if you want to join our committee, feel free to check with us. We can get your email address and make sure you're included and know when the meetings are going to occur. They are still by Zoom. We started during the pandemic time, and we did Zoom, but we found that Zoom is very convenient for people to join in the meeting. So if you want to do that and hear more and suggest more, we certainly want to encourage that. And I also want to mention that the committee lately has been talking about the fact that we've been focusing on the truth side of the Truth and Reconciliation. We've been researching and identifying the truth and pulling that information together, getting data, oral history, written history, pulling all that together. But what are we going to do about reconciliation? And so that's where that action comes in, more of the action part, and we're getting to that. We know that some communities around the country have put programs into place, like the Evanston, Illinois community that is actually doing reparations for black citizens who were forced out during a particular time in their history, forced out of the city because they couldn't afford to stay there any longer. The land was taken away. Now they're giving reparations. Right now I think it's like a $25,000 grant for folks to come back into the city, and that $25,000 to be used to as down payment purchase in the home in Evanston, making them homeowners and start to build more generational wealth. But programs like that, we'll certainly be looking at the reconciliation piece of the Truth and Reconciliation formula. I just want to ask that you join me in thanking this panel of community leaders who have shared with us tonight. What a great panel. What a wealth of information that they've shared, and we just thank you for coming out and being a part of this discussion this evening. This can't be the end of it. This is only still just the beginning, so we've got to have a lot more discussion and a lot more action in order to deal with the issues of today. So thank you again. Thank you so much.